Hey Nerdy Westies, I'm Cassie Winter.
And I'm Alicia Marshall.
Welcome to another zany episode of Nerdy West Coast Swing, where the anchors are out of this world and the points don't matter. Anyways, tonight's topic is anchor technique and variations, and I shared a whole list of videos on the Facebook event, so if after tonight you want to go back and watch the full videos, those links are there. Otherwise, we're just going to watch like little clips of them tonight. And as always, if you ever have a question, feel free to either unmute yourself and speak or type it in the chat, and we will be happy to answer your questions. And then also, our Patreon is now live. We're really proud of it. Anyways, if you have any questions about that, feel free to ask us. And if you are watching the recording, please hit subscribe so you never miss a replay. All right. So the first anchor we are analyzing this evening is Nicole. I keep fumbling over my words tonight. The first video we are analyzing tonight is Nicole Clonch and Thibaut, but we're really mainly focusing on Nicole here. I'm going to frame through this short clip all the way first before we go back to the beginning to analyze it. And I wanted to make sure to give some context before her anchor, this inside turn. Her anchor. And then her one after it. Because the context before and after an anchor is super duper important. All right, so let's go through this again. Do you want to start out, Alicia?
Yeah. So I chose this anchor because I love the way that Nicole chooses to style hers. She does something kind of different in the exit into her one, but she also does like extra hip movement. So she like lets her hips swing back as she steps onto her first weighted foot. But then as she switches, she really lets it swing the other way. And so you get this really exaggerated hip movement. So right here, she's letting that swing back as she steps onto that first foot. And she's almost releasing it like in an overextended way, almost. Like it's going past where would be maybe even for her. And then can you rewind it?
Yep. Wanted to make sure you get all those hip switches.
So as she comes onto that second foot, you can see how far she's letting that hip release on the foot that she's changing her weight to, so her right foot. And then she's really allowing her hip to settle before she moves anywhere for that one. So, and what she does on her one that's a little different than most follows, I would say, is she takes her right foot and puts it in a track across her left foot and glides that forward. So it's not just like coming out of third position, tracking that foot straight forward. She's letting it come across that weighted foot. So you can see she's tracking it forward and then it's coming across.
Yeah, her right foot is very much on the same floorboard as the ball of her left foot.
Yeah.
And then like we talked about last week, because she's very much trying to keep her weight back, it's Thibaut's strong connection that's drawing her onto such a large step one with a heel. She's using that as a braking mechanism.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that I tend to see with Nicole specifically, because she chooses to do her anchors in a way that really keeps her delayed. And so I do tend to see a larger one with her than I do with some other follows.
Yeah. So one of the things to pay attention to when you're watching this really extreme delay of the hips in an anchor is the upper body in relationship to the hips, and noticing how much her hips are swinging underneath herself and her head isn't going very far in either direction. So it's very similar to the idea of center counterpoint that we talk a lot about, but instead of it being a counterpoint, it's her center axis. And so her head is staying stable while she's letting her hips swing underneath her. And she only starts coming forward and shifting screen left because Tebow is leading her in that direction, and her hips are releasing behind her to help counter that lead and to delay her weight transfer onto the one and create that braking action. Because you can see her right foot has made contact with the floor here on one, but her center is very far back from that foot. And that's only possible because of the strong connection with Tebow. Doing that yourself without that connection would be very difficult. All right, while we're here, I'm going to see if there's anything about Tebow's anchor that I want to talk about.
He does that interesting rotation with his foot.
Yeah. Yeah, so he's pivoting on his right foot as he's drawing his left foot across for his kickball change. That very much mirrors hers. And then he takes a side step. So he's actually on a separate track. And that's probably one of the reasons why she draws her foot in front of her other foot. It's because of how Tebow switched tracks. And then the other thing I want to point out, because this is a very important thing to know as a leader, he's moving his center and letting his foot fall underneath him. So the order of operations out of an anchor into a one for a leader is your center moves first and your foot follows through with that, as opposed to your foot moving first and your body following through with it. Anything else you wanted to talk about this clip, or shall we move on to another one?
Not necessarily. I think we're good.
All right, cool. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to let us know. Otherwise, our next clip, go away, Zumbar. Okay, there we go. Our next clip is Melissa and Maxine. And we're focusing on Melissa's anchor right here.
So she starts it out with a ronde, and it's very over-rotated. And she is like completely the opposite from where Maxime is with her upper body. So she's placing her weight on that left foot, and she is asking for some like extra leverage from him because she is at an angle, a pretty intense angle. But yeah, so she's also, as she's coming into that ronde, she's making sure that she's not super extended away from her like elbow and their center counterpoint. So she right here, her elbow is pretty close in towards her. Like it's not necessarily touching, but it's in close enough so that she can allow that upper body to move away ever so slightly.
Yeah, and just because it's a little hard to tell, but her elbow is still bent here. It's just that her elbow is moving away from us in the camera.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so that extra space that she creates by keeping that arm in is what's allowing her to over rotate so much. And then she also places that foot in front of where she is, so away from Maxime. And then she rotates back towards him on that foot. So she's moving even further away.
This step?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then she rotates around that foot that she just put slightly further away from him.
Yep. And I love, like, this styling has so much foundation in Lindy, like Lindy
Mm-hmm.
swivels.
Yeah.
Like this position she's in right now is a very classic too of a Lindy whip.
Mm-hmm.
But because of the nature of what's going on the connection right now, they end up doing a one after that. So
Yeah.
this anchor styling ended up being an extended anchor. I hear a dog.
I know.
It's so weird. We're so often cat people.
I know.
It's almost foreign.
So one important thing to note is that when she does rotate back around towards Maxime, her elbow is then getting closer to her again. So she's making sure that she's keeping a fairly consistent amount of weight behind her connection once she requests a little bit more leverage from him. Because if at that point she leaves her arm like as extended as it already is, when she rotates around, she's going to be falling backwards because there's going to be a lot of extra room in that side of her connection.
Yep. And then I just want to highlight how great a job Maxime does of maintaining the center counterpoint of the handhold through this moment.
Yeah.
So he's letting his hand, he's not leading this rotation of the hand. I would say Melissa is, and he's following it. So he's allowing that natural rotation of the wrist to happen, but he's maintaining the center counterpoint through this whole section, which not only allows Melissa to feel safe, but for Melissa to be connected. I can't tell you how many times I've been social dancing with someone and I've wanted to play at the end of the slot like this. Yeah. And the leader takes the handhold and is like, oh, they want to play. I should give them room. Like, could you imagine in this moment with Melissa, this dependent on the connection?
Yeah.
Suddenly the hand going towards her. Like, she's Melissa, she'd be able to handle it, but it would not be pleasant. It wouldn't be fun.
It would not be what she intended.
Yeah, and then there would be a gap in the connection. All right, is there anything more you wanted to talk about this anchor?
I think the only other thing that I wanted to know was how soon Melissa is establishing that need for extra leverage. So right here, she's already requesting more from him. And at that moment, he should listen to that and allow her to have more control over whatever's going on. But had she waited any to establish that connection, it's more likely that there would be a gap in the connection for a couple different reasons, but he is not going to be aware that he needs to pay attention to what she's doing. Granted, this is Melissa and Maxime. He would probably pay attention anyways, but, just in terms of like the connection, he wouldn't know. He would know visually, just not from her like connection cues.
Right. And it's really that connection is starting to happen in this moment. We can
Yeah.
extrapolate that her arm is more or less in the position that my lines are in. And it's really common for follows to hit this position with their right arm across their body and to not be engaged in tension in the connection in this moment, and to wait to add tension until you're here.
Yeah.
And that's way too late.
Yeah.
It's really important to start communicating it at this point in time when your frame is close to your body, not only because of timing, but also it's easier when your frame is close to your body to connect in with the connection.
Yeah, and what's happening for follows that are not connecting as early as is when she gets into that position. Can you rewind it to that initial connection point? So right here, you can see that Melissa's shoulder, her right shoulder, is even with the rest of her body. A lot of times what happens is this right shoulder that has the connected arm is going to draw forward, which is a position where you are no longer connected to the rest of your body. So you cannot give connection.
So you're saying like the shoulder would be here and then everything else would be the same.
Right.
Yeah. Now that's a fun drawing. Hope that makes sense to people. But yeah, it's actually by nature of not grounding yourself through that moment and trying to get that connection by just moving your upper body further down the slot, you actually make it harder to connect. Whereas if you stayed the perfectly vertical line, if you just keep the right side of your body flush with that, like Alicia said, it's much easier to connect.
Yeah, and another thing to think about from the follow standpoint is to think about using that elbow when you have that arm across your body. Keep like an earlier connection point, because if you're just trying to use your shoulder is not really in a good position by itself to help you with anything. So you really need to have 2 points right there. So starting at the elbow, moving up to the shoulder.
Yeah, and this is also a really important point for leaders, because when you're posting, for example, it's always easier to post when you're shaped, as in you're not facing either end of the slot, you're more facing perpendicular to it, in which case it often puts your arm across your body, like Melissa's is right here. And thinking of your upper arm kind of braced against your ribs gives you so much more power and control. And I use that a lot when I'm leading and not just when I'm following. I would actually argue, just personally, I use it more leading than following, because if I were to, this being the size of a follow I am, if I were to brace my arm into my side as a follow, my leaders wouldn't be able to handle it. I wish they could. That's the dream. But yeah, so it's a really important tool regardless of role.
Erin said, is this on a whip when you'd brace your elbow to your ribs?
Yeah, so and I assume this is a leader question. So on whip 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so on count 5, when you're sending the follow past you down line, you should be stepping onto your left foot and bracing your upper left arm into your ribs and letting your left forearm go across your body. So the strength in that pose comes from your upper arm against your ribs, not necessarily from the hand or the shoulder. So hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, it keeps it more based on center movement.
Yeah. I used to teach a workshop. This will probably come back in some form of nerdy West Coast swing stuff. Hey, we can just do an episode on this. I called it elbow magic. And it was an entire workshop based on the distance between an elbow and a rib, and how so much of the nuance in West Coast Swing Connection comes from paying attention to those two things in both roles.
Yeah, very important.
Yeah. Excellent question.
Yeah, so he said it does. I need to try it now.
Great. Yeah, it feels really good.
Yeah.
Any moment where you post as a leader, if you shape a little bit, it makes a huge difference. This is something that Kyle actually does incredibly well, just in his basic foundational technique. So he's a good one to watch for that. All right. I'm going to move on to the next clip. If anybody has more questions, feel free to ask them. So this first anchor we are paying attention to is Virginie's. I think I have spent the majority of my framing through career as a Westie framing through Virginie's dancing.
There's a lot going on with her at all.
It's amazing. All right, so that was it in context. We'll go back to the beginning. Do you want to start?
Yeah, so she tends to have a very unique anchor, in that she doesn't connect to the ground until the very last minute. Or I guess second in this case. Whatever. You know what I mean. But she tends to do this like gliding movement into her anchors, right? So she doesn't actually keep any weight in her heels for the most part. They might lightly touch the ground, but if they are on the ground, she does not necessarily have weight on them. It's going to be on the ball, like the front of her foot. And that's partially because she tends to have a much stronger pitch when she is going through anchors, because I think she's very tall, and so she extends a lot more. Because you can see right here, like she's really like moving her hips back as she's going diagonally.
That was a very sad line. Let me try that again. We're gonna hold shift. Makes a huge difference. There we go. But yeah, this gliding, it's very much like moonwalk technique. Is very common for her, and it must be a tall follow thing, because I know personally I do it all the time.
Yeah.
And I wonder if it comes from, this is just me being curious about things. A lot of leaders, like I was talking about with Melissa earlier, where it's like I want to play, but then the hand comes towards me. I wonder if a lot of leaders think, oh, she's tall, she wants more space. I want to speak on the record. As a tall follow, I want less length to my slot 100% of the time. I want more width to my slot. Not more length, more width. Please don't take that out of context. Thank you very much.
Aaron said, as a short man, I feel that frequently. But yeah, just in general to leads, please do not make your follows run. It is exhausting.
Yep.
We want less length in general, especially if you're tall. But in general, I also do not want to run.
Yeah, none of us want to run. I wanted to highlight this shape because this is very similar to the position we saw Nicole in earlier.
Say that. It's very similar.
That's why I put the line there. But she ends up continuing to pivot to her left to step forward. And I
Mhm.
think that's because of the larger angle they're
Yeah.
at in relationship to each other. Maxime is more rails to the right than Thibaut was,
Yeah.
which is what caused Virginie's left foot
Hmm.
to be different.
Yeah, and they have a lot of round rotational energy coming out of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the things as a tall follow that I know is a technique that helps a lot is to take linear momentum and cut it off and make it lateral,
Mm-hmm.
which often creates a tethered connection
Yeah.
through the anchor that then wants to unwind. Um, so she's very much already prepped to rotate to her right as she's striking onto her right foot here because of that.
Yeah.
Cool. I want to move on because I think we have a different angle of Virginie doing that later, but I want to talk about some fun stuff that Maxime does. So, some zany context if you don't know what's happening in the song. But I wanted to talk about this anchor that he does. So he's progressing towards Virginie, and he does this really fun displacement of his weight, collecting his feet and kicking to the side. In slow motion, it doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but at speed, if you go back and watch the whole video later, it's a really quick movement.
Yeah.
That looks awesome. And the way he's able to connect with Virginie through that, if we think right now, he's very much split weight. So his center is through there, maybe a little bit more to the right. But then he starts pitching his whole body to his left.
Yeah.
And that's how he is posting for Virginie. And then he's able to progress a little bit more towards her for her left foot to actually anchor by swinging that foot out. Oh, it's such a... I hate Westie cinematography. That's just a me thing. But
I was going to say it's very similar to what we looked at. Oh, I don't even know the other week. But we mentioned it earlier with follows like hanging back. Robert said it's not just a you thing.
Yay. We should start a movement. I feel like Brad has finally convinced the majority of us to not film vertical video. Yeah. And now we need to get him on board to be like, no fancy cinematography. Stop moving. Stop jump cutting.
Yeah, so I was saying that it's kind of like what we saw the other week when we looked at Tren, and RJ was like pulling her really far forward, but she was trying to hang herself back and her feet moved and displaced forward.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because she tripled for her 1 and 2. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's very similar to that. Kate said, a nice steady tripod would do the trick nicely. My God,
exactly.
Blair Witch Project stuff.
I will say though, I keep waiting for someone to strap a GoPro to Tatiana's head. I'm surprised it hasn't happened.
That would make me nauseous to watch.
I know, but I feel like you need to experience it just once. That's my feeling there. All right, let's move on to another. I love Maxime and Virginie together. They're such boogers. It's great. So I wanted to highlight this anchor because they both get really overextended.
Yeah.
So there's this kind of like bowing towards each other with overextended arms.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of trying to force himself to progress down line, he's just letting that tension naturally resolve.
Yeah.
By equal and opposite. She comes forward, well, he goes back.
Mm-hmm. A lot of times when you get into these overextended positions, what's going to happen is you're just going to kind of naturally rebound back towards each other.
Mm-hmm.
So there's not necessarily any need even for like a lead to be moving the follow forward, because that's just going to happen naturally.
Yep. Man, her foot styling there looks like actual magic in slow motion. Right?
I was just about to reference an episode we had a long time ago.
Oh, geez. I know. I think this is episode 12. Like,
yeah.
Criminy. Look at us being consistent.
I know.
So one of the things I wanted to say, because like, yes, this is a really good choice that he made. It's a bad thing if that's how you always respond to an anchor. So think of this as like a styling, seasoning, or a recovery tool, as opposed to something you do all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay.
Irrelevant to what we're talking about, but it's cool.
I know, it's so cool.
For thighs,
I might
keep that sliding going.
I know. I might love her. All right, and then this is very similar to Virginie's anchor from earlier, except it's from the other side.
Yeah, and she's hooking her foot.
She's hooking.
And the only way that she's going to get out of that is to rotate, because otherwise she has a really awkward position going on to move forward. And one thing to note with those stylized hooks is that the best way to get out of them is to just continue your momentum and like keep that hooked foot, the one right underneath you, that's going to be weighted. And so that front foot just becomes free to go wherever your momentum is taking you.
And the other thing, it's very subtle because it's only happening in one frame. When you're hooking into parallel, you let the knee of the front leg release and lift the heel. Doink. And that's what's creating the room for the hook.
Yeah. And you can see that, like, just because she has her legs in that position where they're crossed, she's not necessarily off balance at all, because she still has pretty even like weight on both sides of her body. And so you can just still draw a line down the center of her and it's balanced.
And her left arm, it's hard from where the angle we're at, but her left arm is countering her head weight. So her weight is evenly distributed across that line.
Yeah, and she's letting Maxime rotate her.
Yeah.
So she's basically placing her weight and then connecting that hip to the arm and the connection that she has with him, which is allowing that rotation to happen on a fully weighted foot.
Very cool.
Maxine's face is great.
That is so good. All right. Next. We've got Jordan and Tori from the most recent US Open. RIP US Open 2020.
So sad.
Oh, sad. All right. So I wanted to talk about Jordan's anchor here. Kickball change.
Too soon.
Yeah, so there's the simple anchor going into this, but I wanted to talk about this styling that he does.
Yeah.
Which feels very similar to something that Kyle did on the 2-3 of his whip last week.
Mm-hmm. With Alyssa.
Yeah. Look, even the degree of which heel is higher than the other one. Insane. But his momentum continues, and he's leaning to his right. And there's enough connection there that he's having to lift his leg that high to counterbalance himself. So it's like, it's both a styling, but also a internal balance based on how much energy is going into this moment. Because if you go back and you watch the video later, this happens very quickly.
Yeah.
And his center ends up tipping, and he lifts his leg to counterbalance himself.
Yeah. So it's like an intentional choice because he can feel like where his weight is at. And so he's choosing to make it something look a little bit more stylized with some angles and such, rather than making it look like he's falling over, which was actually kind of happening.
Mm-hmm. I want to highlight here that as he's finishing his anchor and leading his one, again, it's his center that's leading Tori forward. Mm-hmm. And that's how he's actually able to step in place. So we have our 5 and a 6. It's his center moving screen left that's bringing Tori forward. And once she's already moving forward, he's able to step in place. Mm-hmm. So, like I said earlier, body before foot for the 1. And right here, he's very much tethered to Tori. So it's her energy of passing him that completed his rotation for him. Mm-hmm. Oh, my computer's a little twitchy. Okay. Twitchy computer. Yeah, so right here, he's tethering around based on Tori's momentum down the slot. Mm-hmm. And I would say that like he really lets it overbalance him so he can do that. Mm-hmm. Like this feels like a very intentional choice to me.
Yeah.
But it's also a kind of styling that is a result of just counterbalancing yourself. Mm-hmm. It's not like he's trying to think of doing anything necessarily too fancy with his legs. He's just using it to counterbalance himself.
No. Yeah, there's just a lot of momentum. And so he can feel that it's going that way anyways. And so he just chooses to do something that allows that momentum to resolve.
He has so much fun in the stands. I mean, they both do, but like he's on cloud 9. If you guys haven't seen it before, please go watch it. Then we wanted to talk about Tori's anchor here. Yeah, like I said, they're having a blast. I'm not sure I've ever seen Tori smile that much. It's so great.
This song is just a very
I had never heard this song before, but I'm like, Jordan knows this song by heart.
Yep. There's a moment that he kind of dips Tori and then holds her there as he does something, and then she's like, all right, I know I'm gonna be here for a minute, so
it's actually right before this moment.
Yeah.
So he dips her, and then it looks like he's yodeling.
Yep.
But it's more of a It's a country song, I think is what's going on. He's so excited. Tori's all like, okay. Stay here looking pretty.
He realizes that she's going to be there for a while.
Wow. It happens so fast in the video when you watch it at speed and you're paying attention to Jordan just having the time of his life. I've never paid attention to Tori's hand and arm like this much. It is so intentional.
Uh-huh.
So gorgeous. She finishes every motion. Oh, so perfect. Meanwhile, Jordan's just like screaming into the ether.
Mm-hmm. Karen said he's yelling Charlie.
Yeah. Yep. All right, so back to our regularly scheduled programming. So this is very similar to the anchor that we saw Melissa do earlier, except with a little less over rotation.
Yep. And not a ronde into it.
Yeah. Again, it has that Lindy swivel feel to it. And the large one is a result of the connection, not because she's intending to do that. Oh, I went too far.
Yeah, so we have quite a bit of momentum here. And so you can see that they're both trying to kind of stop it. And that's why she's taking that foot and hooking behind her so she can break herself by getting into this angle.
Mm-hmm.
It just kind of delays it.
Yeah, so the first thing she does is really delay this weight transfer onto her right foot.
Mm-hmm.
And then to further delay herself, she hooks behind to break herself.
Break.
And then she translates it into rotation, which allows the redirect to happen.
Yeah.
So much of what an anchor is in West Coast swing is stopping momentum and then going in the other direction. You have to slow yourself down before you can get going in the other direction again.
Mm-hmm.
And there are lots of different tools to do
that we talk about this month for our membership.
Oh, hey. Oh, hey. Oh, hey, you segued. I'm so proud.
I did. I was not going to intentionally do that at all, but.
Yeah, we have put together, like really, we've only finished working on like week 1 of our material for the Patreon this month, but it is awesome, people. Highly recommend. And we have an assistant. Their name is JJ. They're non-binary 3D animated character, and all sorts of fun stuff. So please check it out at patreon.com/NERDYWCS.
Yep, that first video is going to be posted tomorrow.
Yep, and if you sign up after then, you'll have immediate access to it as soon as you sign up.
Yep. Anyway, enough plugging.
All right, we did the thing.
Not intentional, but
I'm proud of us. Okay. Any more things you want to say about Tori's anchor before we move on to?
I think so.
All right, our next. Man, I almost said our next couple. I am not Robert Wilson.
I mean, that's not incorrect.
It's true. It's true. Anyways, we've got Sean and Lisa from most recent Monterey Swing Fest.
Mm-hmm.
And Sean chains together 2 hitch timing delayed connection. Oh, why is the camera moving? It makes this so much harder to frame through. Anyways, 2 hitch timing delayed weight transfer anchors. It's like hesitate and go, hesitate and go. So the timing is 1, a 2, 1, a 2. So that was it in total. So you guys have some context. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about the mechanics of this, because you really need to be in sync as a partnership,
Right.
to make this work. And it's really dependent on a center counterpoint, because you basically establish a center counterpoint and then everything but your hips and upper body move.
Mm-hmm.
Or no, sorry, the opposite.
Yeah.
Only your hips and lower body move. Your
Yeah.
upper body stays the same. At least I caught myself. That would have been very confusing if I hadn't caught myself. But anyways, so the first thing that Sean does is he very much bends his elbow. Here we are. We've got more elbow magic.
Yep.
That's going in the glossary. Anyways, his elbow is very much up against his rib cage. There might be some space. It's hard to tell with his shirt.
Aaron said copyright it.
Copyright it. Elbow magic. Trademark Nerdy West Coast Swing. Every time another teacher says it, we hear cha-ching. But anyways, we also got a new term courtesy of the wonderful Phoenix Gray that we'll probably be talking about in a future episode. It's called rotisserie, and it's a very specific style of snaking your body around through a turn. But anyways, rotisserie, it's great. So back to our regularly scheduled programming. So Sean's elbow is very close to his body here, and that's allowing him to be very clear of where the post is. So that way Lisa isn't traveling too far away from him.
Yeah.
Because that allows them to hit connection sooner.
Mm-hmm.
And usually a lot of the time it's not just how you connect, but when you connect. And when you want to change something, you have to connect sooner than you think for your partner to get the memo.
Yeah, just like we were talking about earlier with Melissa, signaling to Maxime.
Yep. And now if you watch, and I will say this correctly this time, their upper bodies in hand connection are staying very calm. And it's their feet and legs that are doing most of the work.
Yeah. And
so
really, there's not that much momentum happening. It's basically all just coming from him pressing out of the floor.
Yeah.
And you can like see them shift together as he presses through it.
Yeah, so he's going to place his left foot, and she's already placed her right. And they're both pressing together. And it's the follows goal to be slightly behind in time. And Lisa did like a great job with this because at first her timing is ever so slightly ahead of his.
Yeah.
Like she's ready to really drive forward on this left foot as she's pivoting on her right. But then she's like, oh, he's not leading me to drive forward. So she shortens her left foot, or the step of her left foot. So that way she can stay back weighted.
Yeah.
And then they're in sync.
Yeah. The other thing is that when she comes into that initial position, her hips are slightly back. And so she's not necessarily connected to him particularly well. And so as she realizes that they're not really going forward, she takes it and like settles back. So then her hips are in line again.
Yep.
To reconnect. Yeah.
And this is very much like I was talking earlier for a leaders one, the same kind of theory is happening. Sean is pressing through his right foot, leading his body down line, and then placing his left foot underneath him right before he would fall over. Yeah. So his left foot is catching himself.
Right.
So he leans, he leans, he leans, and he's really emphasizing that line of his left leg. He leans, he leans, he leans. He catches himself.
Yeah. And you can see that he's not necessarily using those muscles to intentionally place the foot. He's relaxing them and just letting it go underneath him.
Yeah.
And so then he's letting his lower body follow his upper body.
Yep. And then the other thing to pay attention to is he's not quite letting his left foot come parallel with his right, so that way it's easy for him to cross over in front. So his left foot is staying slightly behind of his right foot.
Right.
This is one of those like deceivingly simple things that is really nuanced and really excellent to watch and really satisfying to dance with a partner. I'm betting I'm not alone when I say that like really being in sync with your partner through the connection is one of the reasons why so many of us love this dance. And this is one of those moments that it's absolutely necessary to be really in sync with your partner and to be patient and to listen and to take the time for it.
Yeah. Really well done for both of them.
Yeah. All right. Last video of the evening. Look at us being mostly on time.
I know. That never happens.
Evil cackle. So we've got Kyle and Cameo from Mad Jam. For some reason, the pink lighting is very disorienting for me in this video. It reminds me of the fever dream jokes from last week. Like a Willy Wonka fever dream. Anyway, so this is Kyle that we're focusing on here, and I wanted to focus on this anchor and draw back. So he's passing Cameo, scrolling back. His anchor is just a step straight back because he's scrolling away from her to reestablish tension in the connection. And he's letting the center counterpoint remain where it is so Cameo can settle onto her left foot. So you can see it's very interesting. So he's continuing to progress screen left, but his hand is not traveling as fast as his body.
Yeah.
So he's able to establish connection without throwing her off. And I love his contra body in this moment. His right shoulder is back, his left hip is back. And it creates a really nice line. And it also creates a really clear direction in his lead. I love that contra body. So his feet are kind of like pointed towards us in the audience, but he wants Cameo to go that way. And the way you like neutralize where your body is facing as a leader is by hooking under and having contra body for your one, which helps tell the follow to go straight down line. Yeah. And it doesn't end up being confusing. But I want to go back a little bit and highlight again that center counterpoint. All right, so he's drawing down her arm, waiting until they hook together again. So they're hooked. Yep. I want you to notice this space right here. There we go. Ooh, the pink's disorienting. All right, I'm going to turn on ghosting so you can still see that image. And notice how the hand is basically staying in the same place, but Kyle is moving away from the center counterpoint. It's very obvious now with this distance. And that is so important. So he was moving away from her while extending his left arm away from his body at the same rate, which allowed the center counterpoint to stay where it was. So see how his elbow is getting further away from his body? That is such an important skill as a leader. Cool. Was there anything you wanted to say in particular about the anchor of Kyle's?
Yawning over here. No, not necessarily.
It's almost bedtime.
What I was going to talk about.
Great. Is there anything you want to say about a cameo?
Not necessarily. She is keeping her weight ungrounded until she hits this point right here. And that's because of the way that he was kind of using her and like moving her.
Yeah.
So she was trying to be reactive.
Yeah, and she has placed her left foot in front for her anchor to help act as a brake, to help counter his energy away from her.
Aaron said, how do you train that? How do you train which part?
Oh yeah, which part?
The arm staying in place.
The arm staying in place. So this is actually one of the things that it's good to use the whole refrigerator door handle trick. I don't necessarily agree with that for styling. Yeah. But for this, actually, all right. So you start with the refrigerator door. I don't know. Yeah. Well, anyways, sorry, my brain right now. So you hold on to the refrigerator door. Make sure you're holding it at a height that is about the same height as your center to practice, because it's easier to practice adjusted for you first. And you want to practice stepping away backwards from the refrigerator while extending your arm, and try to get it at the same rate so the connection between you and the refrigerator door handle is constant the whole time. And it'll feel like a resisted release through your arm. Right. And then to practice having more connection, because like a refrigerator door can't resist you. You could do just like a closed door that won't open if you pull on it without turning the handle, and practice having more weight in the connection, like you're actively pulling on the door while you step away. And you're trying to make sure the amount of tension in your arm, like amount of weight pulling on the door, stays constant as you're moving back. So like if you were to move back slow and extend your right arm forward fast, that would release the connection. And if you were to step back fast but not released fast enough, you would pull yourself forward. So you want to practice having connection with whatever you're holding on to, be it a door or a refrigerator door, and practice stepping back and extending your arm out in front of you at the same time while keeping the connection constant.
One thing I want to say about that is using a refrigerator door is really good to train keeping that weight the same. Because once you establish your connection, even if you're moving back away from it, the door should stay closed. It is very easy to open it. And so you know, as soon as that door comes open, there's way more weight.
Yep.
So just know.
Yep. Very good point. So like, that's why I suggest doing both the refrigerator door and a closed door, because then you train it into your body for both amounts of weight. Because like the refrigerator door helps give you that nuance that like, oh good, I'm not pulling too hard. But then the closed door that's secured helps you practice it with more weight in the connection, because every partner feels different. Yeah. Excellent question. Alrighty. I think that is it for this evening. Oh, I can see all your lovely faces again. Very exciting. All right. Any last minute questions? Any questions on our Patreon shenanigans, which y'all should sign up for because it's fantabulous. Yeah, we're super proud and excited about it. So, and if you know of anybody who you think would enjoy it, please share the information with them. So, yeah, next week on our live free episode, we're going to be talking about shaping, which is a natural progression from what we just did. That wasn't intentional. It just happened. And maybe the week after that, we'll do elbow magic. We'll see.
That would be a good progression. Considering we just brought up elbow magic.
Elbow magic.
About it.
And this week on the Patreon, or this month on the Patreon, we're doing grounding. Next month, we're doing weight transfers, which will include things like toe leads, heel leads, and delayed weight transfers. Ooh. And then month 3 will be turns. So yeah, you know there are going to be lots of fun vertical lines when we're talking about that stuff. So thank you all so much for joining us tonight. We hope you have an amazing end of your week and weekend, and we hope to see you back here next week. And for those of you who are watching the replay, please subscribe, hit that notification bell, all those things that make me feel very silly when I'm talking. And please check out our Patreon. Links below to all the things you need.
Yep.
Ever in life.
We have become those people.
Yeah. It's weird.
Sorry, guys.
So I've been doing nothing except for sewing. And so I want to show you guys something that is very pretty that I made.
Yes.
You don't have to care. You just have to see it.
We care. I care so much.
Can you see? Yeah.
Ooh.
Holy cow.
Whole
Wow.
thing. But aren't they so satisfying?
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
It's so cool. There you go. You can see it better in the light.
Yeah, that looks
Yeah, it's gonna
awesome.
take forever. But anyway, that's what I've been doing.
That is
Thanks for
so
sharing.
cool. Man, my relationship to sewing is kind of my same relationship to gardening. I have a black thumb. I should not be let near a sewing needle either. Or a sewing machine. Bad things will happen. Which is a tragedy because I really should be able to modify my own clothes. That would make my life so much easier.
It's so nice.
It is really
Like,
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a brown thumb. I don't kill it. I don't kill it where it's there's no hope. I just don't care enough to keep it alive. I see it and I'm I gave it water. What does it want? I just don't know. And I don't have enough bandwidth to care. I'm I have a cat. She is treated like a queen. But otherwise, that's it. That's where I stop. I'm just not.
That's amazing.
Yeah. But I don't downright, I'm not they don't just kill in my house. They're just brown. Fairly often.
That's amazing. Wait, words. Okay. My brain just farted so hard. My phone is buzzing so aggressively. I have no idea why. Okay. It is now on a soft
You have a
surface.
voicemail still?
What?
I said, is it telling you have a voicemail still?
Oh, man. All right. Funny story, people. Yesterday, was that? No, that was 2 days ago.
I don't know.
It's been a week. Alicia and I were in a meeting and my phone kept telling me over and over and over again I had a voicemail, and it was just the same voicemail that it had told me about before. I was going slowly insane.
It was a lot.
It was a lot. I think even you were pissed at my phone by the end. I forgot the hotkey for pasting suddenly. I don't know how that happened. All right, we've got... What? Yes, I know. He's back. Like a boomerang tonight.
That was a really chill episode.
I loved it.
It was great.
And I really love how Erin asks questions.
No.
Makes me so happy.
Please ask more questions. We can answer them, promise.